folks. Welcome back. This is the Foolish Optimist Podcast. I am your host, Amy McDonald. If you're new here, we are on the hunt for the next generation of leaders in the United States. If you haven't yet subscribed to the podcast, you can do that wherever you're listening. And if you're feeling very magnanimous, do me a favor and rate and review it. It's a huge help for us. Now, on to the very fun part. Our guest today is Hunter Garcia Miranda. He is a proud fifth-generation Californian, born and raised in the heart of Orange County, and is now working as a California attorney. Hunter began his legal career specializing in state and municipal law, and now also works as an immigration attorney in a pro bono capacity. After working in Democratic politics for the past decade, Hunter realized the party needed voices to truly challenge the establishment and not simply toe the party line, while passing bold policy that will actually address the root causes of the issues we face. Hunter, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Amy. Yeah, no, really excited to be on the podcast, and thank you for the work that you're doing. It's honestly so important to have outlets and opportunities for especially grassroots candidates that don't have access to the hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars that the establishment politicians do. So this is super great opportunity. So thank you so much.
I'm grateful to do it. It's fun. Normally we start with the easiest question of all, why you're running, but I have to ask, are people in Orange County really registering their dogs to vote right now?
I think that's one of the many misnomers that people love to throw around, that, thousands of dead people are voting, thousands of pets are voting, which is, just another distraction to get people to not realize that there is, especially nowadays, there's this huge grassroots movement of people that are demanding real fundamental change in politics.
Right.
And I think that's just one of the many the fun distraction points that they like to throw out there to deter.
I just saw an article about it, and it was like some woman somehow managed to register one pet, and of course now it's like the talking point. But I was like,
That's
and it's an
hilarious.
Orange
Yeah.
County pet, which means that pet is living a great life. It's voting, it's at the
Right?
beach, it's
Yeah, what else could you want?
the dream,
Did it say what
right?
type of pet it was?
It was a dog. Yeah, yeah. I didn't get
What
as
does that
far
mean?
as what breed,
Right.
but probably a compassionate voter if we were guessing,
Yeah, there you
unless it
go.
has to do with
Exactly.
cats or squirrels.
Right.
Um, so
No, it's hilarious.
back
Hopefully
to,
that won't be an issue, but yeah.
I think it's one lady, one time, and it does happen to be in your district. So I figured I had to
I
ask.
will I will keep a close eye. When we're door knocking and things, I'll be checking the pets and making sure.
Cross-referencing.
Exactly.
Okay. Sorry for that. That was just, it
No,
was top
I
of
love
mind.
it.
I was looking at the news in your area, but talk to me. Tell me why are you running this year? What's important to you and why are
Mhm.
you running in this district?
Yeah, so like you mentioned when we started, I've been born and raised in Orange County. I completed law school, finished law school in DC, and then came back to I started working in local and state policy work, and then have recently transitioned to immigration work. I think for obvious reason, there's so many
Yeah.
due process violations and fundamental violations that are occurring in our immigrant communities. I'm lucky to be part of a or an area of California that have very strong immigrant communities here. And it's been shocking and appalling to see the things that have been happening. People who have been here for decades, hardworking people that have children, families are literally living in fear, scared to be torn apart from their families. So
Mhm.
that was one reason why I wanted to make sure that members of our communities were getting the help and the legal resources that they needed, particularly with due process protections and making sure that the legal processes are being followed. That is just one of the many, obviously, terrible things that are occurring right now and things that have to fundamentally change at the federal level. And with regards to me wanting to run in this district and at this time, right now, I think unfortunately the Democratic Party has gotten to a point where they have been so ingrained and reliant on big money and big corporate interests, where the Democrats love to have their slogans and their catchphrases about what they're going to do and who they're going to fight for. But when it comes to actually passing the real policies that will create tangible change in people's lives and allow people to live good, prosperous lives where they can work a hardworking job and still get ahead rather than being stuck in these cycles of poverty. And we as voters have to realize that, unfortunately, that's a reality that's occurred over the last 40, 50, 60 years under both Democratic and Republican leadership. And this isn't something that happened overnight. It's not just something that popped up out of nowhere. And if we as Democrats aren't willing to call our party out and require those fundamental changes, then nothing's going to change, right? So if we
Right.
keep voting for the same exact politicians that keep saying the good slogans and the catchphrases, but then when it comes to actually voting the way that they need to address those root issues, then nothing's going to change. So after working in Democratic politics for about 10 years, I quickly realized that, being a voice inside the party and calling for those changes isn't going to do much. So it requires a challenge. It requires someone stepping
Yeah.
up and saying, hey, we have to vote these people out if they're not willing to do the things that we need them to do. And they're just,
What do
just
you
toe the
think?
party line.
Sorry to interrupt
No,
you. What
please,
do you
please.
think the reason for, the catchy slogans but no action is? Do you think it's a money thing? Do you think it's like a fundraising
Un-
point?
Unfortunately, I do think it boils down to the money at the end of the day. For example, having started my own campaign, we've been reached out to a lot of organizations that are in the space of campaigning. It is essentially a
Hmm.
giant industry
It's
nowadays.
its own ecosystem. It's fucking
Exactly.
bonkers.
And one of the most mind blowing things to me was that I have never been asked 0 times about my policy positions, the things I'll be working for, never by any of the institutional organizations that are in the establishment. This single thing that they're focused on is how much money you can raise and how much money you can bring into the Democratic Party. That's their sole focus and their sole thing. They don't, again, don't they? I haven't once been asked what
That's
policies I'll be
so
pushing for.
yucky.
Yeah, and that's just one example of the yuckiness of the current
Like,
system that we have and how
yeah,
dependent it is on big money. For example, you have the current incumbent I'm running against. He's already raised $1.5 million. Only a small percentage of that comes from small dollar donors. So it
I
is just
can't
this.
I can't
Yeah,
stop thinking about how much good we could do in all these communities with the money that we're
exactly,
raising, right? Like there was one out
exactly.
in Washington state. They raised $12 million for one candidate for a House seat.
Hmm.
And I was like, what do you mean
Literally.
$12
And then when you
million?
actually look at
dollars?
what how they're spending it, it goes into these institutional systems. For
Yeah,
example, you'll be spending $5,000 a month for a campaign manager, 5,000 a month for
right.
social media, and then all of these things where we've been so lucky. And so I'm so incredibly grateful to have, being a grassroots candidate, we've had so many volunteers wanting to help out where we've been able to do those things for virtually free.
Campaigns that need that big money need it because, in my opinion, a lot of the times they're not inspiring candidates. They are just pushing and towing this party line that people have
Yeah,
become so fed up with. So all they're running on is, well, we're anti-MAGA, we're anti this, but we're going to fight for this, rather than fundamental individual policies that people want to talk about and discuss that will address the root causes of all these issues,
right.
rather than, again, like we keep saying, the catchy slogans and the just being anti-MAGA, is not going to get us anywhere if we're not actually pushing for policies that will create real change in people's lives. So that's just one of the examples of how big influence money can, or how big of an influence money has in the political system, even down to local elections too. So it's not just at the
Well, it's
federal level.
wild. Like,
Yeah.
my home base is in New York. So Zohran Mamdani is running right now for mayor, and
Hmm.
people are like, there's a group of people who are just like, well, he's like talking about free buses. That's crazy. And he's like actually already tried the free buses. Like we know that it works. He's
Hmm.
done it in every borough. And it's like, no, this is what people used to do. They used to come with
Yeah.
policy ideas.
Yep. See,
And
that's
actually,
now that seems to be such a crazy concept that
right,
we can have specific, believe it or not, specific nuanced policy discussions that will
plans.
create
Yes.
specific differences in people's everyday lives. And that seems to be a mind blowing thing, where as opposed to the establishment loves to just run on these big
Yeah.
slogan ideas of we're going to.
So give
So
me
yeah.
one tangible specific. Give me one of yours. Tell me.
Yeah, so this one of the most important things is ensuring that we get the influence of big money out of politics. So, for example, there's
Yes.
a constitutional amendment that's being pushed that would
Yeah.
specify to address Citizens United directly and make it clear that big money isn't speech, that these massive multinational corporations and billion-dollar donors can't be funding these campaigns secretly through different shell organizations or how they
Right.
maneuver the system to then gain influence in the political system. Again, like I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
the reality that we live in, where 90% of the entire wealth of the nation is virtually owned by 1% of the population. They own more wealth than the bottom 90% combined, is a beyond
Right.
insane reality that I don't think a lot of people realize.
I think we
Yeah.
need to highlight this because, like, I know this, you know this, but maybe our listeners don't. There are many, many, many groups that will literally write a bunch of different versions of the same law, and they'll write it for the state level, they'll write it for the city level, they'll write it for the federal level, and like see who they can pitch it to get them to bring it to the table. And this is actually
Mhm.
like part of, in my opinion, part of why the big beautiful bill, like we had people just, people were like, hey, on this page, did you see this? And representatives were like, didn't read it, sorry. And you're like, wait,
Exactly.
what the fuck?
Exactly.
That's your job. And you have a team of people to do your job.
And a lot of the times it's literally a rubber stamp because
Yeah.
those organizations are then turning around and funding the campaigns of the candidates that are voting for those things. So it's
Right.
honestly mind blowing once you actually see the process in action. If you see it, people are like, well, no, there's no way that could be true. And unfortunately, like you said, it is the reality that we're
It
living in.
is.
And one of the main
People
things that
just
needs to
don't,
change.
they don't really want to see it, which I understand, right? Because it
Mhm.
does actually, becomes to be like a really painful reality to live in this fact that like, oh, the people I did elect and obviously I gave them $50 or $150.
Right.
And that is no comparison to, for some
Astonishing.
reason, I don't think they're going to listen to me with my $150 as much as they might
Right.
listen to somebody who I'm like,
Right.
hello,
So that's,
help me.
yeah, please. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. So if we're electing politicians that are willing to do that and play that game, then we're going to be stuck in the same exact system that we're in. For example, the candidate I'm running against, he is very good with the Democratic slogans and the catchphrases and
Right.
I'll fight for this group and I'll fight for that group. But for example, if we go through the actual tangible policies that he's voted on, he voted
Mhm.
to help Republicans. For example, he voted to give the Trump administration sweeping police power in DC specifically,
Mhm.
which, for example, you've had a lot of DC lawmakers coming out and saying, what the hell, why are you voting this way? To add on that, then this is a huge point of discussion that I hope we can get into, his support for Israel and funding,
Yes.
further military funding on that regard, and his complete silence to the atrocities that have been occurring. And those are just some of the things, the votes that have occurred that are just completely antithetical to everything that we're supposedly fighting for.
Mhm.
And
A lot of the times, unfortunately, it's not aligning with the slogans and the catchphrases that they're pushing.
Yeah. Well, and
And
it
at the end
does,
of the day,
it takes some time, but it does not take that much time. Like
exactly.
it's like a hop, skip, and a jump on the internet. And then if you want to take it a step further, if you're a high achiever, you can cross-reference with open secrets to see where their
Mhm.
funding is also coming from. You can do a little turn that brain on. We've all been
Exactly.
watching too many TikTok videos. Turn the brain on, go check it out and cross-reference and see if they're actually doing what they said they were going to do.
Exactly. And because at the end of the day, we can say all these things and talk about all these slogans and things, but what really matters and what really impacts people's daily lives are the votes that the Congress
Yeah.
people are voting on, right? And the laws that we're actually passing. So if those aren't
Mhm.
aligned with the messaging and the core values that we need, then what's the point, right?
I agree with that 1,000%. But let's dig in a little bit into, as we speak right now, it is September 30th. This episode will come out in exactly 1 month. But right now, like the flotilla is about 24 hours out from trying to break through the Israeli blockade. And obviously, we've got Spain. They've revoked United States' airspace going into Gaza. They had 150, 125,000 people protest. Berlin had a big protest. I'm in Berlin right now. I was bike riding there and got in a bike
Wow.
accident, so I did not make
Oh,
it.
are you okay?
I'm fine. I have like a giant lump on my head.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I've
Jeez.
got some like glue.
Sorry that
Fine.
happened. That's good. Okay.
Wear your helmets. We're going to pitch this episode to the big helmet,
Exactly.
see if we can get some funding there. But so, yeah, I mean, what is your thinking around, obviously, the tagline is that the United States has a very special relationship with Israel. It's the only democracy in the region. What do you think?
Yeah,
What do you
again,
think is next, and how do we
I'm over the
extricate ourselves?
taglines. Yeah, I'm over
I
the
know you
taglines.
are.
I'm over the catchphrases. And these are human lives. These are children being
Yeah.
massacred on a daily basis. 1 in 3 children in Gaza have had a limb amputated. The idea that this is any sort of thing that we have to do as an Americans to support Israel is beyond ridiculous in my mind.
Yeah.
And the fact that it isn't being called out every single day by every politician we have is evil in my mind. And
Right.
the current atrocities that are happening cannot continue. For example, we have to ensure that there is aid provided to the people. People are actively starving on a daily basis. So we need to
Hmm.
immediately ensure that aid is provided and that there's
How do you,
humanitarian.
sorry, how do you think that, like,
No,
where do you
please.
think Congress's role is in this? Obviously, there's budget, there's money,
Hmm.
but like Donald Trump, the president, I don't know why I explained that. Donald Trump seems to be very, he he thinks that he's playing Netanyahu. I think
Hmm.
Netanyahu's playing him. Um,
Yep,
I think
I
Netanyahu
agree.
is probably one of the smartest people in power right now across the world, and that scares me. What do you think Congress's role is aside from just not signing budgets?
Yeah, so I think right now, specifically in this moment, we have a duty and a responsibility to ensure that the people of Palestine and specifically in Gaza are given the needs and the resources that they need to live. You know, it's a very basic thing because of the role that we've played to cause the suffering that is currently occurring. So I personally think that there has to be a congressional delegation to quite
Yeah,
literally go to the border and ensure that the aid is being provided. One of the horrible things that is happening is that the aid will be given in a certain zone and the people will
right.
be able to go through a corridor, but then the corridor will be actively shot at to prevent
Yeah,
people from leaving that corridor, and then there's misfire and people get shot and killed as they're just trying to simply get the food from one
like
place to
food.
another.
Yeah.
Literally the basic most simple thing,
Ugh,
right? And that's just the immediate thing that has to happen. So there has to
right.
be ensure that they get the food in the immediate moment and aren't actively being shot and bombed every single day.
Yeah.
And then moving forward, there has to be a level of Palestinian self-determination in the region to ensure that the Palestinians have a voice in how they will be, you know, what will happen to Gaza specifically. And that's more of a long-term, you know, issue that has to be dealt with. There's a lot of
Hmm.
complicated parts that are going to be a part of that. For example, establishing, you know, what would that actually look like? What would a Palestinian government in Gaza after all of this has happened look like? And ensuring, in my opinion, that
Yeah.
Hamas isn't a part of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't. In my opinion, Hamas has done nothing, has been completely detrimental to the Palestinian people. For
Yeah.
example, if you compare what has happened after October 7th, any objective observer would say that the Palestinian people are much worse off. And to think
Right.
that they have the best
Well,
interest
and
in mind is unfortunately, in my opinion, not the reality.
there was a big talking point for about a year, right? We're almost 2 years out from October 7th, right? It was October
Hmm.
7th, 2023. We're a week away from October 7th, 2025. And for a
Hmm.
year, even a lot of Democrats were saying, well, like, this is what the Palestinians voted for. They voted for Hamas. The last vote was in 2007. Over
Exactly.
60% of their population is under 18. Nobody
Exactly.
voted.
And
Literally, not a single person voted for this. Fuck you. It made
Netanyahu
me
was
so
actively
angry.
funding. Yes, exactly. No, you to a T. That's such a good point. And it's now proven that Netanyahu was actively funding Hamas to prop them up so that they create this boogeyman that would then justify the atrocities that we're witnessing now.
I'm
It's
gonna fact check you on that.
fair.
It doesn't surprise me, nor am I shocked, but I am gonna fact check because
Yeah,
that's like I
please
haven't
do.
heard that, but I would not, again, like I said, he is one of the smartest, smarmiest, snake-ish men in politics right now, and he happens to be a world leader of a very, very, very well-armed country who has the United States in their back pocket. Scary.
Hmm.
Ah,
Yes,
horrifying.
and the influence, yeah, and the influence that has happened over the last 30 years on U.S. politics is astonishing and something that needs to
Yeah.
be called out. And I also want to make it very, very clear is that the United States has to and should have the best interests of the Israelis in mind as well. You know, this is
Yeah.
the people of Israel themselves are, you know, an important part of democracy in the Middle East, and that's a vitally important thing. But there is a big distinction between what the Netanyahu government is doing and
Right.
them. So I
Right.
think that has to
Well,
be something
and
that
the
needs to be very
Israeli people
clear.
themselves are at this point they're protesting and they've I
Hmm.
mean I've seen the videos out of Tel Aviv and like and not for nothing. Not for nothing. I think about this
Exactly.
almost every day. If I was a family member of one of those hostages, I would
Exactly.
want Netanyahu's head on a fucking pike. That man has been given many opportunities to get these like loved ones back, and they should be returned, obviously. Like that is, but like they've presented different plans, and he has said no in an effort to keep destroying a vulnerable population of more or less stateless people. And
Mm-hmm.
it's I would be I think about the family members of the hostages every day because the hostages are being used as fucking pawns,
Yes.
and that's
Yes.
fucked.
And they're
That it
human
like
beings, right? Yes.
they're exactly they're
Exactly.
human beings that have been away from their family for 2 fucking years, like,
Horrible.
and they've had opportunities to bring them back, and Netanyahu is being Netanyahu and using it as
Mm-hmm.
a point to like literally destroy an entire group of people. So
Yeah.
I don't want
And
to
I
spend our
think
entire
in that,
time talking about
right.
this. Not that it's not important and not
No,
that
very, yeah.
foreign affairs aren't important, but I do want to talk a little bit about your district specifically,
Mm-hmm.
if that's okay. Do you have anything else to
Of
say on
course.
the Palestine-Israel topic?
I just to finalize, I do think it's important that we call it for what it is, and I do think it is an act of genocide that's happening. That's something
Yeah,
that the Democratic establishment has failed to call out by any definition or reading, in my opinion, of the UN Convention in 1947 on
on
genocide. It
genocide.
specifies the parameters for that, and I think this to a T falls in that category and something that we as America should be calling out. And yes, that is kind of the final point on that. But I think one of the most pressing things that has to be addressed right now, because like I said earlier, literally human lives every single day are being lost. This is a complete it's
Yeah,
yeah. And we to think that
yeah.
we as the United States government are actively funding that. A new study came out, and I'm sure the numbers are, can be off here and there, but it gives a good idea that 70% of the funding to support the war that has been occurring since October 7th has been funded by the United States. So
It's
70%
in,
of that war is coming from us. Um,
Yeah, well, it's insane when you think about the amount of money we've sent. It's insane when you
mhm,
think about how they're spending it, right? They're bombing
exactly.
schools and places of worship and hospitals and literal ambulances on their way to save lives. Like
Hmm.
they're
Hmm.
committing war crimes at every level. And then when you take a step back and you look at what's going on in our country and
Hmm.
where the American people are and how close so many people are to homelessness and how many people are losing jobs and how expensive groceries are. And I think we have more than enough money in the United States to help the American people and also help
Exactly.
Palestinians and also help Ukrainians and also I I want to
I
like
very much
flip the
agree.
script. I don't want to
Yeah.
be
Yes.
the lords of war anymore. I would like to be like
Yes.
the humanitarian people and
Yep.
spend all my money doing that. Take care of the kids at home,
Couldn't
take
agree
care of the
more.
kids
And
abroad.
that's the thing. We have more than enough of the money. It's just that all of our money is going to the wealthiest people and wealthiest
In the fucking
corporations. So
world.
that's a good transition to, like you mentioned, what's happening in our district at home, right? And this is
Yeah.
just one example of the things that are happening across the country. Like you mentioned, people can't afford groceries, people can't afford rent, people can't afford to send their kids to school or have childcare. These are
Yeah.
daily things that people are dealing with. And then you look at what we're actually spending our money on, like you mentioned, it's insane, right? And I think
Well,
like one of the biggest misconceptions that have been pushed on the American people is that, well, how are we going to fund these things or how are we going to pay for these things? It's like we have more than enough money to pay for these things. It's just that the money is being siphoned off and put into the pockets and hands of the most richest and
yeah.
wealthiest among us. And that has to be called out for what it is.
Well, and that
Um,
happens in
and
numerous ways, by the way, right? Like we have
exactly.
tax breaks and tax cuts, and we have this like compounding effort to make sure that they make more money and more money and more money while we spend more
Yes.
money. But then also, when we invest in war, these same people are some of the people that are like, I don't know, the CEO of major companies like Boeing and these companies that are building these war machines, which is crazy. And like
Hmm.
Boeing is also not paying their mechanics. Their mechanics in St. Louis right now are on strike. So not only are they not paying them enough, so some of these people are on government assistance because they
Hmm.
can be because they're not making enough money to fucking live. The CEO is getting tax breaks and they're making money off of government contracts because we are bombing the ever living, like we're giving
Yeah.
money to Israel to
And
bomb the
that's,
ever
yeah,
living shit out of people.
that's such a perfect example of one of the biggest things is that all of if we want to really get down to wasteful spending in the United States, we have to look at the military budget. And that's
Oh my gosh,
unfortunately
yeah.
something that so many Democrats just refuse to talk about. The idea
Yeah.
of, oh, we have to lower military spending, and instantly people are like, no, how dare you? if you look at the amount of money that we spend on the military, it is so incredibly disproportionate and wasteful and inefficient and
Yeah.
ineffective on what actually we get as a result. We're not any safer for it. We're not making the world any better for it. And we're literally funneling all of this money to these military industrial companies that make trillions of dollars off of war and off of profiteering off of the suffering of people around the world that
Yes.
we are actively funding every single year with zero discretion. A lot of the times the representatives have zero impact or zero say on how much
Right.
money is actually being given to these military organizations. And that, in my opinion, has to be one of the most fundamental things that we look at, is addressing, okay, what are we spending on, how are we spending it, and how can we make it most efficient and effective to drastically reduce those costs.
Yeah. The irony of the whole debacle with Doge earlier this year is that
Mm-hmm.
I kept thinking about it, and I was like, oh, if we actually did this on our Department of Defense budget and
Yes,
we went through line by
100%.
line with all these private companies that we give so much fucking money to, whether it's consultants or it's like the big corporations and like the people building these things, like if we actually went line by line in that department, but we didn't because that's the department that Elon makes
Mm-hmm.
money off of. But I'm like, that's
Exactly.
where literally I came to the conclusion that we need to address homelessness in the United States under the Department of Defense because it actually is
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm like,
I
actually,
love that idea.
because if we have too many homeless people, it's actually less safe. And like
I love
if
that.
I'm like if I have to frame it that way, it's like $30 billion and
Mm-hmm.
it's a one and
Mm-hmm.
done situation. Like it's
Right.
a drop in the bucket for
And
our
that's the thing. Yeah.
$1 trillion into defense every
Yeah.
fucking year.
And Doge would rather take, meals away from senior citizens than actually, like you said,
USAID,
address that.
like,
Right.
come
Exactly.
on.
So if we need to really look at where the money's actually being spent and how we can use it efficiently and effectively.
Yeah.
And the Department of Defense is the most number
It's
one
so
where we can do that. Yes. And in the way I look at it is that we have to reduce the amount of taxes that middle class and low class people are paying.
Mhm.
So that comes from ensuring that the wealthiest among us are paying their fair share, but it also is making sure that our government is using our money efficient and effectively. And that is
Right.
one of the most perfect examples to make that happen, right?
Right. I feel like a lot of people generally just when we pay our taxes to the IRS at the IRS is just like, "Thank you. You also
Yeah,
owe this much money." And you're like, "But
yeah, yeah.
who's where did it go?"
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that would rebuild a fuck ton of trust in the American
Yes.
people in the government, but I think it would also, like you said, actually create transparency and force the government to do what they say they're going to do.
100%. I'm glad you brought that up because that's actually one of the things that we're pushing for is that level of increased transparency. So, for example, one of the plans that we were hoping to do is in create some sort of portal where every single citizen can log in and see exactly where their taxes are being spent and how it's working and give active feedback on that. I think one thing that we're lacking is a way for people, for example, us having this conversation. How do we make sure that these voices and these opinions are actively being heard by our
Yeah.
politicians and by our elected officials? We can call their office and leave a message with their
And then
intern
they
and
just
and
stop
that's
picking up.
right. So if there's a more active role and involvement of each citizen, that could look in a lot of different ways, but I think that's something that has to be tackled. It's something that we increase visibility and transparency and allow people to actually see, like you mentioned, a
Yeah.
tangible list of things that where is our money being spent, how is it being spent, and that would give people more of a say in that process. Yeah.
I think about it a lot because when, we've got a faction of our country right now, about a third of our country keeps saying the phrase "Make America Great Again." And whenever I ask them, I'm like, "When was America great?" And they were like, "Well, it was when my wife could stay home, I could work, and we could own a house." And in my mind, the only thing I ever want to say, which they're never receptive to, so I got to work on my tactics, is just, yeah, that's when we taxed people appropriately. Like
Hmm.
billionaires didn't exist back then because they got
Hmm.
taxed to high heavens. They weren't, there was a level that a corporation had to pay in taxes, yeah, but there was also a
Hmm.
level of executive privilege that these CEOs could only make X amount of what their lowest workers were making because we actually had workers' rights. And like,
Exactly. And it's guised
I
under this idea of hard work that if you're
yeah,
willing to work hard, but it's literally a rigged system that
right.
has been purposely built that way and systematically created to allow this to happen, where the wealthiest that can just continuously perpetuate their wealth, while all of the hard work and the wealth is sucked out of the lower and middle class.
Right. I really
And
like the
again,
lowest class. I really don't believe should have to pay taxes. Like I believe if you're like under
right.
20,000 or $30,000 a year, I'm like, why do they have to pay taxes? Give them their money. They need like they want to make more money, and when they make more money, they will pay their taxes. It's
And
crazy
I
because
think that
only
goes
the
across the board, that
oh
for
yeah,
low and middle class people, imagine that, if that's the thing, is that people, they don't want government handouts. They don't necessarily want all, like, to be reliant
yeah,
on these services. They want money in their pocket so that they can make those decisions and do the things. The
right.
concept that someone in the United States cannot work a full-time job, work 40, 50, sometimes even 60, 70 hours a week and not make ends meet is beyond insane, while
Yeah,
simultaneously you have, like you mentioned, these massive corporations, massive executives, billionaires, millionaires that are built, like, have created this system to suck their wealth away and put it in their
yeah,
own pockets, whether it
yeah.
be literally price inflation. For example, people are literally being priced out at, for example, getting groceries. We've seen since 2020 50% of inflation has been directly linked to just corporate profiteering, where these corporations have such a stronghold
Like
on the markets that they can just increase the prices. It was under a great timing with COVID and everything, where they could
right,
blame
right.
supply
They
chains
could
and
kind of
blame.
oh yeah,
Exactly. And
it's a little
that's
gray
why we're
area.
dealing with so much inflation, and so many, the cost of living is being so drastically increased, is because you have these massive multinational corporations that have essentially monopolized our markets and our industries to
Right.
allow them to do that. And that's another major issue that unfortunately the Democrats have not done strongly or nearly enough to address, is the stronghold in this, in the real solidification of monopolies that we've had in the United States. And we no
Yeah.
longer necessarily live in a free capitalistic market when you have two, three, maybe four max of these major, massive corporations owning 90, 80% of some of our industries is beyond
Yeah.
insane.
Well, and
And
it's again, it's one of these things that's hidden decently well, right?
mm-hmm,
Like,
mm-hmm,
and that is done by design because I love my American brethren. I love all of us. I do. I really think
mm-hmm.
we're pretty cool people, but we are
Oh
easily
yeah.
bamboozled, and
Yes.
and we don't look under the hood. If things are going okay, we're not popping the hood to check it out. And I think
Mm-hmm.
something that clicked with a lot of people just recently is Jimmy Kimmel. A lot of people had this aha moment of Disney, Hulu, ESPN, HBO Max, all of these other, and it's all under one umbrella, and everyone was like,
Yep.
"Oh shit!" And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah, this is what we've been screaming about." Like,
Yes.
and then you
And
have
that's a, yeah.
like the Facebooks and the Metas and the like, and you're just like, "Come on, guys!" And I think about it all the time because that's like the work that I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so many people haven't even registered it yet because they've made it look different. And that's the same, that
Mm-hmm.
goes back to all the same stuff with the way that they're paying into politics and stuff. They've made it look a certain way so that people
Mm-hmm.
will not investigate further. And I'm with
Exactly.
you. We have to break up the
And
monopolies.
that's such a good point, tying back to kind of the overarching thing that we've been talking about, is that people tend to think that, oh well, the system is the way it is and now it's too complicated to fix. But we've done it in the past, we've done it very efficiently in the past, and there's
Right.
laws there's tangible things that we can do that will make those differences and create the world that we want to live in. And that's something that I think we always need to keep highlighting, is that there's so much to be done that we can do, and
And we
not
could
just,
do
oh well,
quickly
it's
and like
exactly.
fairly like that's the thing is people think it's you're right. People think it's impossible. And so many people are like, "Oh, we can't get anything done." And I'm like, "No, we can't get anything done right now because there's two reasons. One is like you're talking about these establishment Democrats who will not roll up their sleeves and they won't throw some elbows. Like,
Hmm.
sorry, you gotta get in there and get dirty. And if you have to,
Yep.
honestly, if you have to make friends with Marjorie Taylor Greene to get something done,
Right.
fucking
I
do it.
agree. I
Like,
couldn't agree more.
but then we also do have a Republican Party, and they're not Republican,
Right.
right? We have MAGA parties that
Hmm.
since Barack
It's
Obama got
proven
elected,
that, yeah.
they've chosen not to work. This government shutdown coming up is something that's stuck in my mind. Like I just
Hmm.
saw
Hmm.
Chuck Schumer tweet something being like, "We're going to talk about healthcare." And I was like, "No, shut it down. You're
Hmm.
negotiating with terrorists." Like he's my senator. I'm like, "You've done great. Love you." What I don't love you. But like whatever. You've lived a life of public servant service.
Right.
But like shut the government down, get people on every fucking news organization there is, get people on Joe Rogan, get people everywhere you can talking about the fact that it is shut down because of the MAGA party. Like, don't it's I feel like I'm going insane. I feel like we're
Yeah, no,
showing
I
up to
agree.
like a
I
knife
think
fight with like it's a
yes,
gunfight, but we're showing up with like a
I
butter knife because we were told it was a knife fight 15 fucking years
exactly.
ago.
Exactly. And yeah, I think one thing, for example, like with the redistricting in California that we're
Oh
actively dealing
yes.
with, I think that's a
What is this,
perfect
Prop
example of
50?
50 exactly,
Okay.
of us actively fighting back. You know,
Yeah.
the for example, Gavin Newsom, I disagree on quite a few things, but I fundamentally
Say.
agree with his position that we have to be an active Democratic Party that is actively fighting these fights. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, we love to play follow the rule book and say, oh, sorry, poor us. This sucks.
No.
What a shame this is happening. It's like, no, we can't be doing that. We have to take the fight and be the ones creating the charge. And what I think is the key is that we're actively pushing for policies that would create tangible differences in people's lives and
Along the
highlighting
way.
that every
Yeah.
single day. That's what we're
Yeah.
fighting for. It isn't just this, we don't like the Republicans, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, we want to create tangible change in people's lives that will make your life better. We're not here to play politics. We're not here to, just to slay our slogans. And like
Right.
you mentioned, if that requires making friends with Marjorie Taylor Greene to pass a bill that will benefit the lives of Americans, we'll do that. That's what has to happen. It's the tangible
Yeah.
specifics that will create actual change. Everything else, in my opinion, is just talk that doesn't help
It
anyone.
doesn't
And it's just
matter.
politics as
Yeah.
usual. And it doesn't matter. It's a way for them to raise money because it's so easy for them to send a blast text out saying, I'm fighting MAGA. I'm fighting this. And then with a great picture of Donald Trump that everyone then it gets fired up about and replies to. There's a huge
Yeah.
distinction between that as politics as usual and making sure that we're fighting for specific policies that will actually help people. That's what people want to see. They don't want to see politics as usual. They want to see specifics and us actually creating change in their lives and pushing policies that will create that while simultaneously fighting against the policies that are going to hurt that.
Yeah.
For example, with the big beautiful bill that just passed, one of the most devastating pieces of legislation that have passed will result in one of the largest transfers of wealth, like we keep talking about, from the
Yeah.
lower to middle class. And those are objective things that if we point out, a lot of people will say, well, hey, wait a minute, maybe I voted
That's
for
not
Trump,
what
but
I
I don't
voted
support
for.
that. Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Well,
if
and
we're
I think
pointing
there
to those
is,
things, that's, yeah.
sorry, I think there is a
No, please.
way to do exactly what you're doing, right? And at the same time, raise the national discourse a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about like, we don't have to be annoying intellectuals all the time, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we can do that. We're good at that. That is
Mm-hmm.
something
Oh,
that
yeah.
people on the left are very good at. But like having these real conversations about like this is what the big beautiful bill is going to do in your
Mm-hmm.
district specifically, or on the
Mm-hmm.
flip side, right, this is what the infrastructure bill is doing, this is exactly the
Yeah.
money you're getting, this is exactly where
Mm-hmm.
we're putting it, this is exactly which bridges will be fixed, this traffic will be less here because of X, Y, and Z. Like, and
Exactly.
I don't think the Democrats did that at all, and that's like
No.
2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Like
Yeah.
that to me is
That's
like
such a good
still a
point.
place that you could still be running on the fucking infrastructure bill. I'm not kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Like that
I
is so
agree.
many jobs. That's so much like infrastructure is not sexy. I fucking get it, but it's
Mm-hmm.
fucking jobs and it is
Yeah.
economic and
And
it is
like you said, people respond to that. They want to hear about
yeah,
that and how it's going to actually help them. Yeah.
right,
And we
right.
would,
And I
yeah.
just
And
don't know why we're
unfortunately, we would
not.
rather just run on the anti-MAGA shit per usual, rather
Yeah,
than these specifics, which is, like I said, is an important thing that has to happen. We have to be pushing back against policies that are hurting people, which MAGA
constantly.
has unfortunately
Sure.
been pushing a lot of, while simultaneously saying that these are the things that we're going to do for you. These are the things how we're going to fix our government, unrig our
Yeah.
economy so that you as an American citizen can work hard and live a thriving, prosperous lives, that your children can live thriving, prosperous
Without
lives.
breaking your back like I think
Exactly.
that's to me I think that's kind of the actual tagline. I don't know if you're a millennial, right?
Gen Z.
Okay, I was like
Last
you're either
cusp.
I was about to say you're either baby Gen Z or like big Gen Z, not baby
Yep,
Gen Z, big but like almost like
exactly.
cuspy, right? Like so like there's you fall into this category.
Hmm.
There was a Slate article talking about how millennials more so than others in the United States, millennials and elder Gen Z and younger Gen X, they're
Mm,
dying at a rate that is unprecedented at a very young
mm,
age. and like 70% of the deaths are preventable. And it's because
Wow.
of our economic system that has been absolutely fucking rigged, our healthcare system that has been rigged, that is literally like ending people's lives because they cannot get access to the healthcare they need. And even if they have the healthcare
Mm-hmm.
they need, they can't afford it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is
Mm-hmm.
all going
Exactly.
back into the like, and I just don't know why we're not talking about that constantly, right? Why we're not talking about
Yeah.
healthcare and what the amount of money the healthcare CEOs are getting, the amount of tax cuts they're getting, the amount that their
Oh yeah.
workers are making, and everything in between, just like ripping it to shreds. And people are like, it's too nuanced. I'm like, it's not. Every single person in this
Yeah.
country has had a fucking healthcare problem. Every person.
Exactly. Exactly. That's one of the biggest frustration is that so many people say, no, that you can't, don't talk specifics because it's too nuanced. No, I completely agree with what you just said is that
Yeah.
people live these realities every single day. And like you mentioned, people
Yeah.
are actively dying every single day. The fact that that's not, like you said, one of the most pressing
The,
things that's happening, like what else is more important, right? And
yeah.
ensuring that we, again, are pushing for those policies that will then
Right.
solve those issues rather than just the slogans and the catchphrases.
But I think if we actually start having those conversations,
Yes.
I honestly, frankly, I've never seen in my adult life. Yeah, like since I've graduated college, right? Like I don't think I've seen the country more unified than I did last December when the United Healthcare CEO was
Mm,
unfortunately his life was taken on the streets of Manhattan. I've never seen the country
hmm.
more unified. Like straight up, no holds bar.
Hmm.
I mean that quite literally. And people are like, that's so rude to say that. And I'm like, no, no, I'm not saying it because I think the person should have passed away, but I'm saying it just as a matter of fact. I saw people
Yeah.
from all walks of life saying, man, this sucks, but I understand.
Right.
Like,
And
so
it
I
just it
just,
encompassing the concept that healthcare is so
it's
rigged in
so,
the United
it's
States. Right.
every single
And
human
that,
being that has experienced it understands why
yes,
someone might
exactly.
do that.
And yeah, the idea that we're expected to just take that as is, and that's supposed to be a common
Yeah.
thing, like, oh yeah, sorry, you can't afford to basically live because the healthcare system is so structured to benefit, to essentially be a way to suck money out of
Shareholders,
you. Right.
CEOs, you're like,
That's the problem with the
and then the
privatization of that.
tariffs just added 100% tariffs on a very specific
Pharmaceuticals.
type of pharmacy. Like say it's the
Right,
pharmaceuticals you
exactly.
need when you have like cancer and things of that.
Yeah.
Like it's life-saving pharmaceuticals. It's not like your like ointment for when you have a rash, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. And in that vein, so with the healthcare space, I think the one of the most pressing things is that we ensure that people
Sorry.
have access to, oh, you're fine, have access to the care that they need in the short term. And then in the long term, we look towards long term solutions of restructuring the entire system. And in my opinion,
Hmm.
healthcare, universal healthcare is the best option in the long term. But in the immediate time, while we have these private organizations and private companies that are basically calling the shots and running the game, we have to make sure that there's a public option available that people have access to. And that's going to be vitally
That's
important, um,
it's
and
people for
a
people to have access to,
reliable,
but also
affordable.
to give some competition. I mean,
Yes,
these
exactly,
these people
and
like
that
Blue
has to be
Cross and
built in.
Aetna
Yep,
and like they're not competing on price for anything.
it's
Like they
another
don't
example of the
care.
monopolization problem we have. Right, we have literal
Yeah.
monopolies owning our industries, healthcare being one of them, and the idea that you would make profit off of people's health is an insane concept. And
It's
virtually every economist has, or not every, but there's a big understanding that with the single payer system is the most efficient and effective way for health insurance specifically. I'm not a big, government needs to be doing everything, but I think that's one thing that it has to do because it is
yeah.
the most efficient and effective way to do it. But that to me is has to be is a long-term solution. That's not going to happen overnight, but something that
No.
we can do overnight is ensure that people have access, well, not necessarily overnight immediately, but have access
But
to
in
a public option
2026,
that is
like you could actually be
exactly.
having a conversation about this
Exactly.
realistically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that has to be the focus is that we ensure that those people, so like you said, the rate of death that's occurring is beyond insane, right? And that we can
Right.
actually address that specifically and provide people the options and the things that they would need to live uh, in the wealthiest country on the history of the planet, right,
Yeah,
is
it's
not a big
insane.
ask. So
It's
yeah, I
insane to me.
totally agree.
I really like firmly believe, and I know that people think that like healthcare is the third rail and they don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, but I like
Yep.
cannot tell you when I talk about healthcare and when I like have conversations even with people who are diametrically opposed to everything else that I believe in. That is the one place we find common ground because we've
Hmm.
all made those phone calls. We've all begged the healthcare company to not charge us $1,700
Exactly.
for something 6 months later that you didn't budget for, that you had no
Yep.
idea was showing up. And then they're like, oh, our bad. We just miscalculated. And you're like, huh. You're like, oh, okay,
Right.
I'm sorry. I thought I was about to be using my rent money to pay this fucking bill, you know? And of course now,
Exactly.
like, there's an entire generation of people that will grow up with fewer consumer protections because of
Yes.
some laws that have just recently passed. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I could not agree more.
I want to touch quickly on your district, and then we're
Hmm.
going to ask 10 get to know you questions. The
Perfect.
guy in your district, he took Katie Porter's. Uh,
Yes.
okay. So, you're primarying him, but even once you primary, if you win the primary, it's still a pretty
Hmm.
tight district in terms of it's pretty
Yep.
purple. It's not a shoe-in.
Yep. Yep.
What's your plan to get voters out to the primary, first of all? Because that's always
Hmm.
that's always fun,
Yep.
getting people to show
Yeah.
up, especially in a
Exactly.
not presidential year. So what's your plan to
Right.
kind of mobilize and get that done? And then we'll talk about the general as well.
Perfect. Yeah. So I think the key issue is ensuring that we have voices in the Democratic Party that are willing to actually call the party out rather than toe the party line. People are so fed up with politics as usual and the same old, like we keep talking about, the same old slogans and the same old catchphrases without actually the fundamental policy changes that need to occur. So I'm really excited to be part of this grassroots movement of people, not just in our district, but literally across the country that are saying, hey, we as a party have to fundamentally change. One, if we want to win
Right.
national elections, and two, if we want to
Yeah.
create tangible results in people's lives that'll make people's lives better, right? And
Mhm.
kind of get over this hump that the Democratic Party is not good for the economy and not, which is bolted, lies compared to what the Republican Party has done. If you look in
Yeah.
the last six presidential presidents that we've had,
Yeah.
every single time the economy is drastically better under Democratic leadership. But even in that same vein, better than is not good enough, right? So there's so much
Right. We
more that we
can
can be doing as a party to
skyrocket.
make it
Yeah.
exactly, and really changing the messaging on that. Unfortunately, the incumbent that I'm running against is very much ingrained in the establishment and reliant on those monies. For example, the things that I mentioned previously about his voting record, as well as his lack of support for calling out what's happening in Israel, is a perfect example of that. He's recently been getting a lot of slack for the funding that he's been receiving from
Okay.
pro-Israeli organizations, while simultaneously having this messaging that he's fighting for the people, which is the same slogans that they love to use. But having a
Of
voice in the party
course.
that is actually willing to call it out on its bullshit rather than just toe the party line is vitally needed. And I think that it's not just something that's going to be coming from our campaign, but from campaigns across the country where you have people challenging establishment politicians.
Yeah.
For example, you have up north from us in San Francisco, you have a candidate challenging Nancy Pelosi, who is virtually saying the same things, where we have
Yes.
to have voices in the party that are willing to call it out and
Hmm.
call for these structural changes that have to happen. And unfortunately, that won't happen if we just keep electing the same types of politicians. So that kind of is what and the messaging that we're hoping to get to the voters directly. We know it's going to be a big uphill battle. We're fighting a lot of money, but we think if we can really speak with voters directly, we're going to be doing tons of canvassing events, tons of in-person events to really get face to face with voters and hear their concerns and hear what they want to talk about and hear the issues that are affecting them. And again, like I said, being that voice in the party that will really call for those structural changes rather than just towing the party line. We know that people are really fired up about and need that and want that.
Right.
So we're excited to really be part of that movement.
Where can people follow you, your campaign, volunteer, donate, etc.?
Yeah, so we would love if you could visit. It's huntermiranda2026.com. That's our main website. You can go to all of our social
Hmm.
media links from there. We're on every single social media platform. You can donate. We're kind of given that Prop 50 is occurring in November, we're in a little bit of a hiatus
Limbo.
zone, given that the district may shift in November. So right now we're just kind of building up the infrastructure. We actually have our first canvassing event, although it's coming up on October 11th is our first major event. So if anyone is listening in the area that would want to come out and participate, you can find the link to that on our website or contact us directly if you have any questions or anything about that. We're trying to get a big group out for our first kickoff event. And then we'll be hosting canvassing events and volunteer opportunities up until election time. So there'll be plenty of opportunities for anyone wanting to get involved. So the best way to do that would be going to huntermiranda2026.com. And you can see all of our specific policy proposals as well. I know we keep talking about specific policies and it's hard to go into the plethora of them because
I know.
literally on our website, for example, we have 16 distinct policy subsections, each of which have 5 to 6 to 10 specific policy subpoints in them. So there's a lot of content there and a lot of specifics. So we really encourage people to go there, look at our policies, compare that as well to the establishment and the current incumbent that is there. His website, for example, you'll see a lot of I'm going to fight for this group and do, the slogans that we love to hear. Whereas we want to talk specifics. We want to talk tangible policies. So we have a pretty comprehensive list and we love feedback as well. So if anyone has any comments or any things about the policies, we'd love to talk to you about them. So please feel free to reach out. So yeah.
Amazing. So, and then on all socials, it's
Hunter Miranda 2026. Yeah.
Okay.
I think on X we're H Miranda 2026, but yeah, every other major social is Hunter Miranda 2026. Exactly.
Amazing. Are you ready for some random get to know you questions?
Yes. Love it.
Okay. Are you more of a cat or a dog person?
Definitely a dog person. Although recently the cats have been working their way up on the pole. We've always grown up with dogs, especially big dogs. Our one pup, she recently passed away, which was obviously excruciatingly tough, but we're now in the process of looking for another. So that's exciting. But yeah, I'd have to stick with the pups on that.
All right. All right. What is your go-to comfort food? Like comfort meal?
Mexican food. My family makes really good tamales, so I love a good tamale. Yeah, I'd have to say that.
That is my big qualm with New York is that the Mexican food is good. It's not the same.
Well, I was studying at UC Berkeley and then went to school in DC for law school, and it was so tough. Although Berkeley had some, but DC was very hard to find good Mexican food, and that's been something that's across the country. It seems to be an issue.
For me, DC is El Salvadoran food. That they have some of the best pupusas I've ever had, and I can't find anything comparable in New York. And it's the one thing I'm there's decent Mexican food in New York, and you can find traditional Mexican food as well. But I'm where are the fucking pupusas? There's a place in Columbia Heights that was in the basement. That was cash only. Yeah. So good.
I think I've been there. Yeah, they do. Yeah.
I mention it to people all the time who lived in DC.
Oh, the basement
or still
one
do.
in Columbia Heights.
and they're yeah, we used to go after Target. And I was exactly. Yeah, right. You go after Target, of course. Okay, so if you could live in any time period, what would it be?
Ooh, can I go to the future? Is that allowed?
And I mean, I don't know what the future is like, so
that's my point. Okay, fair.
So no.
Time period. No, that's a really good point. I have Native American roots. We're my family's part of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and I would love to see pre-colonialism what the tribe would look like before they were forced to leave the area.
Yeah,
and the coexistence with nature and humans is such a beautiful concept to me, and I think that Native American communities got that down to a T. And I'd love to see that era.
That's a very good answer. I like it. What was the last book you read cover to cover?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Being in law school, I guess the most recent cover to cover would be my bar prep book. That nice thick one about yay big. Tons of legal information, so not the most thrilling.
Fair, but it's a fair answer. It is. It's cover to cover. If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be?
That's a really good one. Someone I've always kind of idolized is Dolores Huerta. The impact that she's had, especially coming from Southern California and the area that I'm from, with a lot of Mexican communities and my family being originally from Mexico, her ability to organize and the power that she was able to instill in people, I think is so beautiful and important. And a good message that we need to realize nowadays is that we as people and we as community can create tangible change and make our lives better while fighting against all of this crazy shit that's happening. So I'd love to be able to sit down and chat, maybe over some
That's cool.
tamales as well.
Exactly. It'd be over the family tamales, and
Yeah,
then she would bring
exactly.
some of hers, and you guys would kind of do
Yep.
like a trade, and you'd blind
Perfect. There you
taste
go.
test. You never know. You
Right.
never know.
I love
Okay,
it.
so
I love it.
our last question is, what's your favorite thing about your district?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Actually, if you look at the map behind me, this is Laguna Beach, one of my favorite beaches to go to. We grew up going, my family were huge beach people growing up. So that was always been my favorite things to do. We have some of the best nature, in my opinion, in the world. So I love just spending time, whether it be at the beach or hiking or, yeah, lots to do. So that'd probably be the answer.
Well, amazing. That's all for me. As I mentioned, guys, this is Hunter Miranda. He is running for the Democratic nomination for 47th Congressional District in California. It might change in November with Prop 50, but we'll keep you posted, and you can follow him everywhere at Hunter Miranda 2026. Hunter, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amy. Yeah, this was an amazing conversation and very grateful for it.
If you've made it this far, thank you so much. Thank you for following The Foolish Optimist.